This program is brought to you by the Merdeka Award.
Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to our 4th Merdeka Award Roundtable. I am your host and moderator, Bettina Khan. Previously, we looked at the framework and the thinking for developing Malaysia that is globally competitive. Now, in this session, what we do is draw our focus to the necessity for that same development to be one that is sustainable, conserves and protects our natural resources and biodiversity while maximizing our economic potential. In short, we are looking at balancing people, planet, and profit, partnerships for sustainable growth. First, let's meet our panel today. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr Engkik Soepadmo to our roundtable. He is this year's Merdeka Award recipient in the category of Outstanding Contribution to the People of Malaysia. Dr Soepadmo is a scientist and ecologist and is widely regarded as this country's foremost authority on forest plant diversity. His achievements are too numerous to account for here. This encompasses research into species diversity and the ecology of tropical rainforests, as well as his advocacy work for the establishment of protected forest areas in Malaysia. Also joining us from Shell, Karen Westley, Global Social Performance Manager. Within her scope are the many aspects of Shell's sustainability agenda. Welcome. And from Badan Warisan Malaysia is Executive Director Elizabeth Cardosa. She's responsible for heritage conservation studies, projects and education. Elizabeth has been at the helm of numerous landmark conservation and restoration projects in this country and is also a member of the Merdeka Award Nomination Committee for the Environment. Welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's start with, if we can, getting a sense of place. I think that's always useful, a useful way to begin. When we talk about sustainability, at some point, we think this idea of assessment comes up. We need to kind of know where we are on a scale of something. Elizabeth, if we can start with you. How do you think Malaysia is generally perceived? How do you think we perceive ourselves and we're perceived by others as to how sustainable we are?
Well, I can really only talk, more about the arena of the built environment, and I think that we have not done too badly. I mean, we are on UNESCO list, for example, the World Heritage list. Both our natural sites, we have some natural sites as well as some cultural sites. So in that sense, there is some kind of a world benchmark, if you want to put it that way, where we fit into certain criteria, where we have had that established. And I think that that's a good thing, and that's really been in the last decade or so, a little more than a decade. But you need to get down, I suppose, to when you get down to the real nuts and bolts of the country and how it's moving in terms of the built environment, it's a new thing. Heritage of the built environment, looking after and conservation of that is really, although it's becoming more fashionable, it is not, we haven't had years and years and years. We don't have a century, for example, and we don't have the kind of built environment where people can go and say, oh yes, we have a civilization that's 3,000 years old, and so we have the products or the output from those civilizations. We're a relatively modern, new country, and I think our oldest, most ancient living city is Malacca, and that's 500-600 years old. That's not very old.
And conversely, in Bapa's field, we have very old rainforests. We're talking a 500-year-old city against your 130-million-year-old forests. Where do you see Malaysia sustainability efforts?
Malaysia actually originally started very well. In 1992, when we introduced the so-called Forestry National Policy. And then eventually it went followed by Forestry Act, which spell out the principal guideline how to manage and exploit our tropical rainforests. Okay?
Can I just get Karen to jump in here? Because I think you have some numbers, some statistics. sometimes I'm reluctant to bring them up because they're 7 or 8 years old, but there are sustainability index, there are climate change performance indices. I'll share one with you, you share one with me. 2 years ago, climate change performance index, this rates emission levels, trends and policies. Malaysia is actually right down there with the big polluters, the US, Canada, Australia. So that sort of sends a message that we aren't doing so well. On the other hand, there's another one that says companies in ASEAN, Malaysia's right at the top of those that do report about their sustainability efforts. So that shows progress. What do you see, Karen?
I definitely think there is progress in the areas of biodiversity protection, as Dr. mentioned. I think the really difficult nettles to grasp for Malaysia now are on consumer behaviour, which is one of the hardest things to change from an environmental perspective, and also some of the very large industrial adaptations that are needed to reduce some of that climate change. So I think Malaysia's made good progress in some areas, and I think some of the harder battles are going to be ahead, particularly with respect to consumption.
Would you also say that there are battles to be fought with the mindset of businesses? Because, business has this traditional mantra, the purpose of being in business is to maximize value for your shareholders. But quite a lot of newer thinking, especially when you start thinking about sustainability, says things like compliance is last century's sort of benchmark. You actually need to move a little bit forward.
Absolutely. I think, maybe just you can't necessarily compare a nation state with a company, but Shell has been quite proactive in external policies around sustainability. But what we've really been focusing on the last 10 years is what that means in practice, how that influences decision making, how it influences technical design and R&D. So it's really translating the policy aspirations of a nation into true performance change. And I think a lot of the sustainability indexes are looking a lot more at outputs, outcomes, results, and moving away from just is there a policy or not. And that's where I think many of us are in the sustainability journey now.
Elizabeth, your experience?
I think that is actually very true in the built environment as well, where there have been policies that have come in. Now people are, it's not just government, I think individuals, NGOs, companies are trying to understand that and to try to find a way to not just articulate it, but to interpret it, I think, within the way in which we do work. So, you have the Green Building Index, which says recycle, yes, but, the manner in which you get your materials for recycling also then comes into play. So you need to find that kind of a balance. And I think we're exploring those things right now. So it is positive in that sense that there is some development, a positive development on that side.
Is it happening quickly enough? You always want to look at the people, who sort of feel is under the most threat. But there's the recycle, reuse, the 3 R's. It's been around. Now people are saying you really have to rethink. So how quickly do people have to get into this mindset that we're discussing?
The Forestry Department, the federal one, every 10 years conduct a survey, a national survey, trying to gauge how much forest do we still have and how much actually has been managed and harvested in sustainable basis and how many percent become hutan rusak, meaning spoil. In other words, you want to regrow the tree, you have to spend a lot of money, a lot of energy, and take longer time. And so you can go back to harvest the timber every 40 or 50 years. You have to wait maybe 100 years until you can go back to the same place. So all those things. And the reason I said just now that Malaysia can reach a kind of threshold period because in the Rio de Janeiro CBD, Malaysia already foresee this, and the government kind of committed or promised that Malaysia will try her best to keep at least 50% of the land area under cover, the forest cover. Okay? And that statement was repeated again recently in Copenhagen, the so-called Conference of Party, last year, I think. We still want to promise to do that.
But can I just ask you? I think what you said just now was really interesting. That we do a survey every 10 years.
Yes.
And at the same time, the MNS says in the past 15 years we could have lost up to 60,000 of our species. So, you know, doing a survey every 10 years when the world of finance and business and commerce moves at such an amazing speed seems to be a little bit out of place. Do we need to react a lot faster, perhaps be having a sustainability program, whether you're a country or an NGO or a business, is quite a lot about anticipating and going beyond what you are supposed to comply with.
I think that in terms of the built environment, if I may say, I think it's important to have your baseline information. Sometimes, you know, and it's a numbers crunching thing, you know, 10 years, 5 years, you know, how do you do? I'm sure, I'm not sure, but, you know, I would expect that the Forestry Department have some way of monitoring, because there are management plans for forest reserves. So there must be some way of monitoring that. And I think that within the built environment as well, you know, there are NGOs actually that do the monitoring. Like you said, the Malaysian Nature Society do this kind of monitoring. There are other sorts of reasons, I think, why things change, you know, climate change. I mean, what we've noticed in the urban environment, for example, is, you know, the loss of the bats that used to come around. But that's because of the loss of insects, probably, I would imagine, if I'm correct. And, you know, but part of that will be because of the environment, you know, the urbanization and all of that. So I think that there are all of these sort of effects, you know, that sometimes we don't go back far enough to sort of look at the cause of it and the base cause. And I would think that, you know, when you were talking about risk management, you know, that is something that we need to really focus on, I think.
Let's take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit more about the role that's being played by NGOs and partnerships and things like that. We'll explore this idea of using public-private partnerships as a means to creating sustainable development. What sectors would this work best in? Where are potential pitfalls? You're watching the 4th Merdeka Award Roundtable here on Astro.
Minyak Premix 95 Extra ni banyak bagi perbezaan dari segi penyimatan, dari segi kelancaran dan juga daripada segi pecutan.
Bila kita naik bukit sampai tak ada power dia kan ada itu bunyi keng. Lepas di sini minyak bunyi sudah kurang.
Kereta saya selalu susah nak hidup. Sekarang tak lagi. Ia dapat memberi penjimatan dalam jangka masa yang panjang. Awak patut cuba sendirilah kot.
Untuk ekstra prestasi dan penjimatan, switch for extra. Setiap hari bermula jam 7 pagi.
Kerajaan Pimpinan Barisan Nasional BN berjanji untuk terus memikul amanah dan tidak akan mengkhianatinya demi kepentingan rakyat.
Dalam Belanjawan 2013, peruntukan telah diberi untuk menubuhkan satu taska bagi kanak-kanak OKU daripada keluarga yang berpendapatan rendah.
Perkembangan konflik Israel-Palestin, rejim Israel dan pergerakan Hamas akhirnya
bersama Buletin Awani bermula jam 7 pagi di Astro Awani, berita segenap dimensi.
Welcome back, everyone. What makes a successful partnership? For starters, establishing clear rules of engagement, transparency, and trust. Because when private money and public initiative come together, transformative change can be possible. I'd like to get your own experiences. Karen, maybe let's start with you, because you actually have worked with NGOs to address certain issues. What is your experience in why it works well?
I think the first reason it would work well is if you're sharing a common vision. So you're coalesced around a common purpose, an objective that drives both parties or even multiple parties towards a set activity. Generally, the leveling of power between the different organizations is part of the trust building. So, you know, obviously companies come with their financial interests and their financial strength. NGOs come with very good networks and implementation strength. So it's really leveling those out and recognizing the benefits of both. I think another one is the capability on both sides to engage in a partnership. So one of the challenges we often have is if we don't have enough resources to actually do the trust building, you set up a nice contract or framework, but actually you don't have the people to make it work. That can really be a constraint on a partnership, and then people lose faith. And then I think the final thing for me is how you set it up in a way that is sustainable in the longer term, i.e. other partners can enter, other organizations can play a role, and you can begin to leverage other kinds of resources. So you don't get stuck within the resource bundle that you set out with in the beginning.
Elizabeth, in your experience with conservation, you've worked on Suffolk House and various other buildings. Don't you find that different agendas get in the way? I mean, you have buildings on prime areas of land, so you have actually there's quite a lot of very diverse vested interests. Have you noticed that if a certain type of partnership is more successful than the other, does private money and NGO do better than private money and government partnerships?
I think that you need the combination of the three almost, you know, in order for it to be really successful. Because if you have government, in a way, you know, you're not battling the planners, you're not battling, you know, the policies and the guidelines, you know. So they have to come on board in that sense, if nothing else, in principle, to accept and agree with what you're doing. You need to have clearly the financial backing in order to do that, and it could be small monies, because sometimes it's just really seed money, and then you build on that, you know, in terms of programming and model projects, and then the NGOs come in usually with you know, the documentation, with the expertise, with that sort of those sorts of skills that you bring in, and if everybody, you know, agrees that it is a good thing, then these will be successful. It's when you have the sort of maybe sometimes a little bit of a prima donna attitude that you occasionally encounter, you know, or these vested interests, you know, with other agendas at play. That's when, but if you have a strong vision and you have a strong group of people who really believe in it and who will work for it, it works. You know, and that becomes successful.
It probably works much better than trying to go it alone.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah. I mean, you need to have the collective effort, you know, because you know, when you're going it alone, you really get exhausted very quickly. I mean, you know, you're scrambling around for all manner of resources, you know, apart from financial resources. You're scrambling for human resources, and you're scrambling really to be able to get your message out. You know, so in a way, you do need this sort of collective effort.
I think what you said about sometimes all you need is seed money is quite interesting, and I want to address this to Dr. Soepadmo, because the field that you work in is really very scientific and very precise, and sometimes the language in which you work is not really very easily understood by the layman, or even regulators or anything like that. You could find yourself with a partner who doesn't really understand what you're doing. So is it sometimes, would you rather just have some money?
I don't think we should work that way, because even among the scientists, we need to communicate to each other so that we can understand each other, we can learn each other, we can exchange ideas, we can develop the science and so on. I think the best option is that money, yes, we need some funding to do any research. But the agreement, the collaboration and the cooperation of every interested party, that should be there also, because that will give us a kind of umbrella. Otherwise, you do something, but I have another interest, I do something. And at the end, you get nothing, I get nothing. So the communication is important here. Okay.
I think there's communication happening outside. I think it's the climate change committee out there is actually trying to say something to us.
One of the dangers about focusing on the financial aspect of a partnership is it becomes a transaction. So the company has a nice event, cuts a ribbon. The NGO also can communicate that it's raised funds. But unless you really have the joint investment in the outcome and the people behind it to make it work, it ends up, many partnerships rise and fall on a transactional type of approach.
There's also this issue. There's also this issue with using public money for something like this. Because it's public money, then perhaps a state authority, a federal authority may say, "Oh, I need to value engineer this. We can't be spending so much yes, the goal is a very important one and good one, but we kind of can't be spending so much, and then it scales down. And very often when you try and cut a budget, it's those eco-friendly solutions that are the first out the window. So is a government, in that sense, really your ideal partner?
I think that government can be a partner. I think in some cases, certainly we're talking about an urban landscape, for example, have to be a partner, because you're dealing with private owners, you're dealing with local authorities, you're dealing with, so you're not only dealing with individuals, but you're also dealing with the large policy. But the partnerships can be in many, many different ways. It really is, what's behind it, what do you want to achieve out of it, I think, at the end of the day, and unless that's very clear, and everybody agrees on that. Because sometimes I think that, we're saying something, and, part of the problem with NGOs or in any field, I think you use jargon.
Yes.
And then you expect everybody else to understand what you mean exactly. And it may just be this communication gap, which isn't the fault of any particular body, but I think what Karen was saying is, to actually have that vested interest and to be accountable, for the collective.
And you must measure, don't you think so?
Yes, and you must measure.
I mean, that must be one of the sort of benchmarks for deciding we're going to go from, we've done A, we're actually going to do B, based on what you can measure, quantifiable. What are the processes like at Shell for all of these initiatives that you do in sustainability?
Well, one of the measures that we are really interested in looking at the moment is the leverage that a partnership can create to bring in other partners and other resources. So I'll just use an example for that. In Gabon, we're in a public-private partnership with GIZ, which is the German Development Corporation, and we've both put some money into building local capacity around planning, development planning. And out of that, they've leveraged the Presidential Infrastructure Fund in Gabon, which is oil money that goes into a fund, to invest 20 million in some road upgrades in the region. So the example there is we both put a little bit of resource in, built capability around local government planning. They identified a key planning need, and then they were able to leverage government money into that. So I think that's a very nice example of catalyzing, working within a local institutional environment to identify a need that communities feel, and then leveraging the correct parties to put the investment in to make a difference. So that's maybe one way of describing it.
We're going to take another quick break right now. We'll come back and talk about what needs to be done better and soon to protect our tropical rainforest diversity. Merdeka Award recipient Dr Engkik Soepadmo shares with us what is probably an inconvenient truth. This is the Merdeka Award Roundtable.
At Shell, our scientists are passionate about finding ways to improve our fuels. With its unique formulation that is designed to clean your engine and reduce friction, Shell V-Power helps improve performance with advanced technology.
Setiap Ahad, bukan gosip semata-mata, tapi fakta dan informasi dunia hiburan.
Mungkin kerana dia malu, dia telah pun meninggalkan rumah.
Datanglah, you're all welcome sebab kita clean hearted.
Tidak ada istilah persaraan bagi saya lah.
Kita nak sampaikan tentang love story Tun Siti dan Tun M, bukan melalui dialog tetapi melalui muzik.
Filem ni, dia tak ada langsung sense of geografi dia. Kita ni banyak ada similitude.
Gala TV Plus, Ahad 4.30 petang di Astro AWANI. Berita segenap dimensi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is clear that sustainability, even if confined to a discussion on only the environment, encompasses an enormous field. Some of the subtopics are land and resource management, air and water quality, reducing waste, protecting ecosystems, maintaining biodiversity, and developing the right minds and mindset. The challenge is really great, and in this part of the roundtable we're going to look at some of those challenges in the conservation of Malaysia's immense forest diversity. And for this, Bapak, I'm going to turn to you and your expertise. I think stakeholders in any development are driven by very different agenda, and because they are driven by that different agenda. They all have their own concepts of what exactly it is to be green. But surely you cannot take out parts of a rainforest, put in an oil palm estate, and say, oh, we really haven't harmed it very much because it was green then and it's green now.
Whether look it from environmental point of view or for biodiversity conservation of view, there's a basic fundamental difference between rainforest and oil palm. To begin with, rainforest means that it is a biodiverse. There are many containing a lot of different kind of trees, and these trees, some of them grow very tall, other become the main canopy, other growing below the main canopy, and some even creeping on the ground. So in other words, within the rainforest could be easily 5 to 6 different layers of canopies, we call it, the leaf canopy, okay? So you imagine that, there you are, there's forest stand, full of trees, different layers, and you stand below that. Even if there's heavy rain on top of the forest, the rain will just come down like that. They have to be intercepted by the different layers of canopy or kind of umbrella, different layers of umbrella, and then flowing down to the branches, to the stem, and then only on the ground. So usually there's a lapse of time, up to about half an hour before the rain actually going down to the ground. Okay, and because of that, no matter how heavy the rain is, the forest the soil in the forest is never been directly exposed to the impounding rainwater, and that is how forests function to prevent soil erosion. Okay, the same thing. So this is related to the rainfall, right? And then this rainfall also, the forest also have to recycle good quality of water, because if the rainwater is filtered by a forest, eventually will flow being filtered by the litter, the soil, and so on, and then come to the river, become a clear water. No siltation, there's no erosion. But if you clear forest, heavy rain, and that's where immediately your river after rain become at least silted, but in many cases also polluted. And that's why, sad to say, that the high percentage of our river now is classified as polluted or even considered as dead river, meaning that there's no other species alive there, no wild fish. So that is one of the main functions of the tropical rainforest.
Well, one of the biggest victims of that in Malaysia is the mangrove ecosystems along the coastline.
Yes.
As the erosion comes down, silts up the estuaries, and those mangroves are, that's one of the species
they can't
groups
breathe.
that's really,
You
exactly.
know, the thing that's really struck me about what you're saying about the layers is we used to build like that. We used to build homes with thatch or grass roof, and which they still do in Bali, and it's one of the fascinations that I have, that if it rains and you have a thatch roof, you don't actually get this deluge coming down, you get these rather elegant little trickles coming down, and it'll take half an hour before that roof actually dries out, even after the rain has stopped. Biomimicry is actually something that we should, if you're going to adopt sustainability, is something that you should be looking at.
I think that if you look at also, even in an urban environment, you look at the unglazed roof tiles, again, they absorb the water, the rainwater, and it doesn't, actually, I mean, what happens is when the sun comes out, it helps cool the whole, because there is a ventilation. There is a way that where the hot air rises as the water from those, whether it's a thatch roof or whether it's an unglazed clay tile, will rise up, and it just pulls all the hot air out. So it acts as a tropical ventilation, really, and it's quite it's quite cool, actually.
It is. I think it's very. But we're going to go back to rainforest for a minute, because the other thing is, one, we seem to be getting rid of the necessary layers that we have to protect the soil from erosion and hence keep our rivers clean. But there's also the sense that okay, well, we can address your concerns, Bapa, in this part and that part and this part and that part, and you get this very fragmented thing. Okay. But there's also a big move, I think, by the UN to say, look, if you're going to save a rainforest, you kind of have to do it in this contiguous manner. You can't chop it up. What is the reason for that?
Well, this is the thing, because I just add a little bit, because the rainforest is also function as gas recycling system between oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, 5-layer tropical rainforest can fix or sequester more carbon dioxide compared with monoculture oil palm. So in other words, rainforest every day can expel oxygen to the air for us to breathe, whereas the carbon dioxide being reabsorbed back by the leaf, fixed through photosynthesis and become eventually leaf, fruit, and things like that. So in other words, per unit area of tropical rainforest can fix, can absorb, you want to say, carbon dioxide compared with oil palm. So this is another important function. And rainforest also can reduce increasing temperature. Just imagine a hot sun, you got a lot of trees, one moment you stay there, and the next further away, there's only one tree, hot sun also. Which one will you feel hotter? Under the many layers trees or one tree? It's the same thing. And the same thing, that's why in a highly developed urban area, usually much warmer than, say, like a place in Prem or in Bukit Taman, things like that. So all this combined, plus additional air pollution and so on, this is where you cannot saying that we can replace tropical rainforest with oil palm, because after all the price is good and they're also green. But we're losing a lot of the function which is performed by tropical rainforest.
This requires, of course, again, that shift, that rethink that we talked about right in the beginning, where you can't just be happy with what the status quo is right now. We have to do one more quick break. We'll pick up the thread of this discussion when we come back. We'll also talk about the world of business and mega corporations, and where the concept of sustainability and the environment belongs within that organization. Because if it's not front and center, it might not even have a fighting chance. We'll talk about the big barriers to sustainability in the boardroom. This is the Merdeka Award Roundtable.
Minyak Premix 95 Extra ni banyak bagi perbezaan dari segi penyematan, dari segi kelancaran dan juga daripada segi pecutan.
Bila kita naik bukit sampai tak ada power dia kan ada itu bunyi. Lepas di sini minyak bunyi sudah kurang.
Kereta saya selalu susah nak hidup. Sekarang tak lagi. Ia dapat memberi penjimatan dalam jangka masa yang panjang. Awak patut cuba sendirilah kot.
Untuk ekstra prestasi dan penjimatan, switch for extra.
Every Monday.
So what kind of music do you actually listen to? Is it like hard rock music? Like, yeah, I'm on my phone before a match. I probably hear house music just to get the beats going.
Nicole has been a great friend to me, and she's been helping me throughout the whole circuit, my whole professional life.
I have always been in love with Volkswagen, and I'm still in love with Volkswagen. I had a 1972 Beetle. And that's it today for Women in Management.
Women in Management, every Monday, 8:30 p.m. on Astro AWANI.
Welcome back, everyone. If you want to find out just how embedded any company's environmental strategy is, all you really have to do is check its annual reports. Because here is where, within the first pages, you should be able to get a sense of how deep that company's commitment is. In effect, you could see if it's really a part of the company's DNA. Now, many Malaysian companies do in fact practice some level of commitment to sustainability, but in many cases it is more a case of adopting a green practice or a green technology because it helps to trim the fat. Truly sustainable approach would see companies grow, but responsibly. So we pick up our discussion right now and take it back into the boardroom if we can. For sustainability to work, you have to have management buy-in at the very top. It can't be something that's happening in the PR department or risk management department, can it, Karen?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And to get that buy-in, you need to really make a business value case for why sustainability is important to that particular company based on their business profile. So we did go through that journey in Shell about 5 years ago, where we did a portfolio review and said, if you lost time on these projects, this is how much billions of dollars you'd have to lose. And that started a conversation about the value of sustainability. As
everyone perked up when they heard that one.
They did perk up, and actually a lot of organizational change was triggered as a result of that. Really embedding decision making around multiple social and environmental criteria into the business process.
Elizabeth, I think what she said there, which was very important, was this getting a sense of what values you assign to it. So in your experience with the built environment, how do you must have a lot of trouble convincing people that there is a value to an old building.
Yes, a lot of trouble is putting it mildly. I think that part of the problem is you know, in Malaysia certainly, you know, this whole, we're really quite dismissive of anything which is old. You know, it's quite a stigma because we are constantly trying to persuade that, you know, glass, steel, concrete, there's nothing wrong with that, really, but, you know, that is the only imperative. And so we're constantly driving toward that. And there's this sort of loss of sense of place. There's a loss of sense of, you know, what was. And it's not being nostalgic only, really. It is, how do you know, what a huge tower can do if, you know, you don't know where you came from? So in a sense, you have to have a point of reference. I think a context within which you're looking at development. And old towns and old places actually provide you that patina and it's a different sense, you know, and it gives you a perspective, I think, on where you are and where you want to be next. And I think it is that, you talk about journeys, it is that kind of a journey that we need to, so we do need to look more closely at what as a society we value, and not really to be dismissive of things which are either that we don't understand or that we consider old, because they do have values. It's like telling your grandmother, you know, just put them in a home, you know. I mean, you talk about Asian values and then, you know, you sort of chuck somebody somewhere because, you know, you need to get on with life and you're just far too busy to spend time. So what does that mean? You know, I think we need to look at that. In your experience, I think what was also quite interesting, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but many years ago when we started talking about sustainability, it was very much in the CSR vein of things, and I think you yourself, you started with some poverty alleviation programs at Shell in Africa, and now instead you actually work with the exploration and production divisions to say, you know, we need to think about our processes here, but that is quite a learning curve for a lot of people. Can you share what it was like to try and change that mindset and educate?
Yeah, I mean, just to put a little number on that, when I started in the social performance team in Shell, there were 3 of us. Now I manage 300 of us around the world. So the people investment, really strong people who understand the business, but also understand the social context. Those are fundamental to delivering this agenda. So real investment in people and capability. And then, if you have strong people who are able to show that it makes a difference, you can really start to influence management. And then, of course, you need to find those leaders or those managers who really do care, and they become your champions. So really supporting, it's a bit like Aikido, go with the flow of the person who's ready to make a change. And I'd say that in Shell, we moved from almost like a heroic management context where you'd have one manager, like the Malampaya manager in the Philippines, who just totally got it and invested himself. And then you'd have the rest of the business who just chanted along. So our real journey has been to systematize this across the business in decision-making, in requirements, in experiences and learning, in order that it's something that's done quite systematically across the business, not just in some special cases.
I'm starting to get very worried for Bapak here, because when you say you started with a team of 3 and now you have a team of 300 in your field, do you have actually people who are interested? I mean, I think, if you want to care about something, as you said, if you want to be able to value something, you must understand it. And I know people who wouldn't know a papaya tree if a papaya fell on their head. They wouldn't know what it looked like. But are there enough people, I think, here who are engaging in the academic and the scholarship of understanding our rainforests?
We have, in the sense that in the last, say, 30 years or so, our trained manpower in different aspects dealing with the tropical rainforest system increasing steadily, be it in university, in government department, and research institute like PRIM. For example, like PRIM, when I first joined PRIM in 1993, at that time, Datin Sri was the Director General. And that time, on the whole institution, he only got 10 PhD holders. And he really tried very hard by asking, helping people to get scholarship and so on. But now, we have more than 100 PhD holders, different people, different branches of forest research. So we have, okay? And not only that, even there are some people overseas, like in UK, or whatever it is, historical, or they were born here before, although they're back in UK, they still got interest in our tropical rainforest. And those are the people we use as a kind of people who we can call for help if we need any help in terms of training, establishing collaborative training research. That's what we do. So there are still a lot of people in UK or US.
So the signs are good. It's an encouraging.
Yes. So at least the warm body we have. Put it that way.
Yes.
But to do all these things, which especially concerning the different facets of tropical rainforest, we need also facilities and funding. And the funding is a major problem now, especially in the last 20 Malaysian plan. The priority is that now it must be project must have an impact and commercializable, and then we're generating economy, things like that. But in some cases, the aspect we are dealing with nothing to do with commercialization.
Yes,
I think I think it's the value and the social cultural agenda.
Yes.
I think you can't just have an economic agenda, because an economic agenda on its own is not sustainable. You do need to have a social cultural agenda, because if you don't have that, an environmental agenda, you lose your rainforests, you lose your rivers. Everybody is suffering under drought, climate change, etc. We lose our built environment. You kind of lose your history, your identity.
Yes.
And then you become, much the same as the next. And so, what differentiates you? I think that really is what you need.
And that's where partnerships are so valuable. Bringing the different ideas, the different capabilities. You may have 300 people in your company, but you have access to thousands of brilliant minds. So I think it's leveraging all of that effort and helping the companies bring that external thinking into their own DNA, as you call it, or way of thinking that really makes things different, makes a change.
Okay. So we right now, from the beginning when we talked about it, we got a sense of a little bit of, okay, we seem to be doing all right, and now we're hearing some concrete examples about why we actually really are kind of on the right path. But of course, there's efforts that everyone can make. So we'll come back to this one. In the final segment of the Merdeka Award Roundtables, we're going to talk to you about why each and every individual effort to bring profit, planet and people into balance counts. Keep it here.
At Shell, our scientists are passionate about finding ways to improve our fuels. With its unique formulation that is designed to clean your engine and reduce friction, Shell V-Power helps improve performance with advanced technology.
Monday on Entrepreneurs.
Taximong is a virtual taxi call center that enables passengers to actually book a taxi using their smartphones or PCs. When we first conceptualized the whole idea, the product was in January this year. We released the product in April and started commercializing, everything done within a year. To get the product out, we spent close to 400,000 ringgit. My philosophy is just change to whatever that the customer wants and you'll be able to make your money.
Entrepreneur, Monday 9:30 p.m. on Astro AWANI.
陆晨，跟着师傅把功夫学好。
谁来找陈师傅？学陈家拳。
陈家拳不外传。
陈家沟啊，来了个怪物，得让你帮忙毁了铁怪物，要学拳易如反掌，把他们拿下。
Tai Chi Zero untuk menempah filem terkini saluran 480.
Welcome back everyone to this, the final section of the 4th Merdeka Award Roundtable, balancing people, planet and profit, partnerships for sustainable growth. We have covered a lot of ground in a little under an hour, from forest diversity to climate change, focusing quite a lot on natural and built environment issues. And of course, it's clear we need to find a way to embed sustainability into current business practices and political ideals, and to educate our young people so that sustainable development lies at the very heart of the choices they must make as the future leaders of businesses and of this nation. We've also established that it requires a transformational shift in attitudes. So we'll come back to you, Karen. When we listen, you talked about jargon. When you listen to the jargon about sustainability and everything that can go wrong, it's quite easy to say, oh, goodness me, this is monumental. What can I as one person possibly do? And you must have felt that when you started with your 3-person department.
Yeah, exactly. I think the challenge with sustainability is it's a public good. You know, everybody wants it, but people don't want to make a change to contribute to it. And that can be a very small change of, you know, turning the shower off when you're soaping up, or cooking on gas, not wood, or whatever it happens to be. Or it can be a massive change, like investing in a major industrial change in your coal processing plant. So I think, for me, the biggest challenge for sustainability, not just in Malaysia but elsewhere, is the empowerment that people need to see that even a small change contributes to something bigger. And that's where government policy, regulation, business communication can all add up to make the popular climate or the popular way of thinking move forward. So plastic bags. Does everybody really need to have 3 or 4 plastic bags in the course of their shopping expedition? We do have a plastic bag policy on Saturdays. Bring your own bag. Why can't we do that every day? Recycling. You know, when I lived in Holland, recycling was such a part of the culture that your neighbours would actually watch you and comment if you didn't recycle. So where is that movement in Malaysia? And we're ready for it in Malaysia. People are educated, and I think so.
I think we're a bit softly. I personally have a beef with the plastic bag thing.
Almost
because if you can deal without it 2 days a week, why can't you deal with it every day?
You know, actually, I think that, you know, everybody carries a bag in there, you know, a shopping bag in there.
Or whatever.
Yeah, whatever, their car, you know, or whatever, whenever you go shopping. So, you know, what's the big deal, you know?
And so softly is not going to work. It's not working for Bapa. Softly doesn't work for you.
No, but you know, it's almost, you could say, a cultural difference, right? You know, and then, you know, you can't, how do you tread on toes? But I think that education, and if you're talking about young, it's not just the young people we need to educate. We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate, you know, the older generation, because, you know, these things are, it's not just in schools at the end of the day. It is at home, it is in your environment, it is in your workplace. And I think that if you start there, you, the individual, start there without preaching. I think that, you know, again, you get into this, you know, I'm preaching because I'm right sort of thing. And then you run into, you know, you might run up against some obstacles. But I think that we do need to begin to look at that. And we need to, I think as an NGO, we need to learn, and it's one of the things we grapple with, how do we articulate it in a way that makes us not sound, you know, snobbish, or, you know, we know better than you, or judgmental, you know, and how can we be inclusive? Because I think that at the end of the day, everybody wants to have a better quality of life. You know, and if we all
you need to have a big stick. Again,
yeah.
I don't think softly works. And sometimes I wonder, why don't we just legislate our way to sustainability?
Well, we have legislations. I mean, maybe not, you know, we do, you know, then it's a question of how do you enforce it?
But between the fact that everybody has a cell phone, so communication is huge, and Malaysia has a highly educated population, school institutions are well spread out. You know, there's all the infrastructure, if you like, the institutional capability to make that communication jump, or to get the government to really commit to this agenda. I think Malaysia can,
and we're right.
Get the consumers to
we're
change.
Right for it, because we are. I think we are not at the point of a country that says, yeah, I'd like to join your sustainability bandwagon, but I can't afford it. We actually can, Bapa. We have the potential.
We do.
Yes.
And the brains. And we have the physical resources, you know, I mean, meaning not just the money resources, but they're there.
It's not only in Southeast Asia, but also for many tropical countries, developing countries. Malaysia is the best candidate to do more things, at least for ourselves in this country. Don't forget about the global problem, because that's even larger problem. You know?
We do that next week.
Let's do more for our own country, be it environment, recycling, or whatever it is, sustainability. We can do more. Okay, you got 1,000 ringgit per month. You can spend it within 1 day or even 1 hour, but you can arrange in such a way that there's something for buy food, repair bicycle, or buy new shoes for your kid, so that it will last for the whole month. Or even save some money for the raining day.
So if the government came to you, Bapa, and said, here's some money for you, where would you spend it?
Just like that, I will accept it. I don't.
But you would like to see the government sort of put a lot more money into developing these partnerships that we've talked about?
Yeah.
And facilitating.
Yeah, facilitating. That's okay. That's no problem. But don't give to individual.
So many people will argue with you, which comes back to the heart of what you said. We need to actually be a lot more communal and care about our neighbour and care about our community and not just within our own four walls.
I think that one of the things that we find is, for example, you know, just on a very simple case, you know, I look after my garden and then I chuck it onto the main road, whatever my garden waste is, so that somebody else is going to be responsible to pick it up. Well, you know, actually, you know, you have to think about your environment and the built environment and the natural environment really as much as everything which is interconnected. And so, you know, you might be in your own house, you know, but you have an immediate neighbor or neighbors, you know, the main road may be in front of you, you know, you're contiguous with the rest of society, really. You cannot live, you know, even on an island, if you were the only person on an island, you have to contend with the weather, you have to contend with the animals, you have to contend with, you know, whatever is around you. You are never alone. And I think we need to have that mindset change.
That takes courage. It takes courage for an individual to stand up. And a very small story on that. Recently, one of my colleagues who works at Port Dickson Refinery, a gentleman came after an event that was held at the refinery and brought a bag of trash and said, "You guys had a party and you put trash in my garden. Here it is." You know, and that took real courage, you know, to knock on the door of a big company and to say, "Hang on, guys, you know, what you did had a consequence for me, and by the way, I'll bring it back." And of course, then, you know, the Shell system chucks in and they have a nice discussion and they resolve the problem. But the fact that he had the courage to say, "That's not okay. I'm going to do something about that." I think it's that spirit of people standing up and saying, "I don't want somebody to throw garbage on my garden," or "I don't want my children to think it's okay to pollute or throw rubbish out the window." It's that courage that's needed.
It does start with the individual, but it does require the collective, and legislation is a good part of it as well. But the enforcement of it and the manner in which I think all of that is done. If people agree that it is a good thing, then you have to work toward that.
Plenty of fodder for yet another discussion on that. But we've thrown the challenge out. We've thrown the challenge out, then it's time we have to bring these discussions, sadly, to a close. We hope that what we've talked about has inspired you to pick up the threads of our discussion, because our natural environmental heritage is undeniably rich, from its forests to marine, freshwater and coastal environments. Our National Parks Act was passed just over 30 years ago in 1980. However, you may remember it took about 13 years of public voice and sheer willpower before Endau Rompin National Park was given its formal protected status, the first under this act. And that is saying that sustainability isn't the playground of just the big boys. We all have a part to play and we all have changes to make. So we'd like to hear your plans and ideas for a sustainable Malaysia on our Facebook page. And until we see you again at the 5th Malaysia Award Roundtable, thank you for spending this past hour with all of us, Dr Engkik Soepadmo, Elizabeth Cardosa and Karen Westley. I'm Bettina Khan for the Merdeka Award.